regular meeting, I'm recording. You'll probably have to get up, Vince, or you'll be looking at a message. All right, regular meeting of the Norwich Planning Commission now going on. I've got an agenda in front of us. Can I get a motion to approve and we can?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Second. Thank you.
Second.
Any comments on the agenda, questions? We got plenty to talk about.
So Jan, are you going to somehow bring up the ruling? Can we add that to one of the agenda items, or is there a way to bring that out?
Which
somehow?
ruling?
So the PUC, the new ruling with the PUC.
The 550, 5100 new? I
Yeah.
think we can do it as part of the solar siting subcommittee report, just to tell people. It's easy to find. I did download it today, but I haven't dug into it. But we can simply report that and then put some pieces of it in the packet for the next subcommittee meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, Jan, so there are two of us who are up for reappointment,
Yes.
Chris and me. And I'm just wondering what role the commission wants to take and whether that's an agenda item we should discuss for the commission to support members or not.
I had just a note to myself in chair notes just to point out that we're not doing the organizational meeting until after the select board turns, and does their appointments. And to clarify, the discussion tomorrow at the select board meeting, where there are 3 candidates that have submitted applications, that's for Stuart's seat, not for, I think, well, Chris and Jeff have until April 10th, I believe, to apply. And then once the select board does their appointments, then we would do an organizational meeting with a full new PC. But Jeff, to your question, I don't know the precedent at all. So in the past, has there been any statement from the Planning Commission relative to existing members?
Yeah, so given your comment that I might talk at length, I'm going to keep it short. The select board has thank you so much. I appreciate it, Vince. No more wastewater stuff. Jan, I'll try and keep it short. But anyway, select board has previously asked for folks in the public to endorse applicants selectively. And I can say that with great disdain. So going forward, to the extent that the Planning Commission thinks Chris and I maybe should reapply, I'd like to know, because if you don't think so, I'm glad to say no. Flip side is, if you think that we're contributing, then please tell the select board we want to keep these people aboard.
What do people think? I think, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I think a general show of support is good from the, I don't know. Do you mean like, sorry, do you mean like, I'm not sure, publicly or just make a statement? At the meeting, or just making a statement? It certainly seems like being at the meeting seems to carry a lot of weight with the appointment, both the applicants making sure they show up and other comments, I guess, rather than just sent in. So certainly make a point to have a presence at the meeting.
Right. I guess my feeling would be it makes sense that existing members who are in good standing should be able to continue with that work. That seems to me to be a good standing principle. I certainly would be willing to go to the select board meeting, to Bob's point, the select board meeting, which will be in April, to make that statement. I guess the question is, we can't stop anyone else from applying, I don't think. I mean, if there are 2 terms up, then somebody can apply to those seats. But I would be happy to make the statement to the select board when they're appointing that that's the feeling of the PC, is that as I would put it, these are members in good standing, and we feel that they should be, if they wish to be, they should be encouraged to continue. Is that, how do people feel about that?
I think that makes sense, and it's a piece of information for the select board to use in making their decision. It's not forcing them to do anything, but it's something definitely to consider, and something to kind of, an extra piece of information for them.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it happen many a time. Over the
That-
years, I've seen the select board, during the appointment, I think Jeff, it happened a couple of times with you, where members of the planning commission came and advocated and said, yeah, this is what. I've seen it happen. This is not unusual.
Yeah, Chris, so I've had select board members like John Pepper advocate that I should never be on another board going forward. So, the toxic past I'm trying to transcend. And so when I stood up to support Bree in her position on the rec council, John said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What everybody else is doing." Well, that only applies to you. So
let's, I mean, I think if the group is happy with, and agrees with the statement that we really want people to be able to keep, we first say that these 2 members, Chris and Jeff, are, participating, doing the job, doing good work, and we'd like to see them continue. And so if you put your applications in, they'll be sitting on the table in front of the select board, and then I'll say that again and I'll say it as a statement from the group, not just personally, if Bob and Vince are nodding to agree to that.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
thank you, Jan. I feel like a rescue dog.
Okay, great. All right, we're still on the agenda. So any comments on the agenda, or I'll just call the question. Everybody agree with going ahead with the agenda?
Right.
All right, thank you.
Aye.
Unanimous on the agenda. Any public comment for items not on the agenda? We have, I know Jeff Lubell's here, but he's for the next item. And so any public comment? Okay. Linda didn't raise her hand, so that's no. Correspondence?
Hey,
Jan,
yes, go
quick
ahead.
question.
Go
How do
ahead.
we get that one?
that's what I was wondering. I might need to mess with Zoom. Are there other people in the meeting? I don't have the little window on the side that shows.
Jeff
else?
Lubell is going to speak to when we're on the planning grant notes in it pretty much right away here. So
Okay.
we'll see if that doesn't work. If you get audio only, then we can probably live with it. But
It should switch to them. I think it's not on the screen. I'm just curious who else is in the public right now. Or at least
it's Linda and Jeff, and they have their cameras off. So
Okay.
okay. So we don't have correspondence other than things that are related to agenda items. So we can jump over that. Quick note on the mapping, and then we can get to the planning grant so that Jeff can get his item over with. On the mapping initiative, so that's going quite well. Actually, and it was Marcia that found these on a Vermont VGIS site. We have the layers for zoning districts. We have the layers, and these are Two Rivers generated layers of the ridgeline, the scenic, the shoreline, the aquifer protection. Those all exist as layers. I double checked with Pete Fellows that those are legitimate, that he put them in and they're ready to go in to NEMRC's portal. So on Thursday, there is a listers meeting. I will, and I've asked them officially, because I said the planning commission would like it, preference is to have it be a single map with selectable overlays rather than a separate map. Cheryl agreed, but wanted to bring it to the listers. So I'll go to the listers on Thursday, explain, answer any questions. And then I would hope that if they say, fine, it's a single one, then I take the overlays we have, I send them to NIMRAC, and $95 an hour to put four or five overlays on, it's going to be $200 or something, and we're there. So that's the plan. It should be done pretty quickly, and then we can talk about anything else. But that gets us the base zoning maps on an interactive map. So that's good news. And then let's jump to the affordable housing planning grant. So if you can see Jeff's there. So just a bit of intro, and then I'll hand it to Jeff to give us the latest and greatest. So we needed a planning, we needed a select board official public hearing. The select board officially asked or said their preference was that the planning commission would run the hearing, hold the hearing. And so we did the 15-day warning period. The advertisement that was in the Valley News is in the packet. So that is warned. It couldn't quite make it for tonight's meeting, and also we had plenty of things on the agenda for tonight, so I didn't want to swamp it. So that will be a week from tonight at 7 o'clock. It's a single issue, single topic special meeting of the planning commission. I assume the select board will need to warn it as well, because they may end up with a quorum there. But so that's the night, and we made it at 7, since it's a one issue thing, shouldn't take that long. So once that planning public hearing is done, then any input from the hearing is rolled into the grant application. The select board makes a final approval, and it gets filed by April 9th, is my understanding. So Jeff, if you want to take it from there and update us on what's going on.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So that's right. We have the hearing on the 19th at 7 p.m. It'll be both in person and available online. The Affordable Housing Subcommittee will also be warning a meeting. But I think it would be, wanted to make sure you were aware of a few slight changes since the last time you saw it and approved it. And also for you to know that this is likely to go before the select board on March 27th at their regularly scheduled meeting. So if you guys need to decide, I guess, if you want to take official action, such as reaffirming your support, that might be useful. But just to update you on what the status is. So you all approved it. Thank you. Went to the select board. One of the issues that they raised was the need to have some professional outside assistance to help with the grant administration and project management. So we had originally anticipated that the Two Rivers Ottaquiche Regional Council would be providing the grant management, but they did not have time to provide project management support. So in consultation with Brennan, we sent out a RFQ to 4 individuals. One of them was Habitat for Humanity that expressed interest in the project, and then 3 consultants from a list that was approved by the state. We got two bids, one from Isaac Wagner, who has a firm that provides these services and has done a number of other planning grants. And the other was from Habitat. Brennan interviewed both of them, had a strong preference for Isaac Wagner. So we are, so you will see in this that we are now proposing to essentially hire a project manager, and they will also provide the grant administration. So it'll be a single entity that Norwich can turn to really do all of the administrative pieces related to the grant, which will take a lot of the burden off of the professional staff, and it is fundable through the grant. So that's change number 1. And change number 2 is really what we need to make that work. We need to pay for that, right? And so we are proposing that the town put in $6,000 as their match for the $60,000 planning grant. So there's a requirement that you provide a 10% match. Previously, we were anticipating that we might try to meet that with volunteer time as well as some time from the town staff. But since the town staff really aren't going to be putting time in, we needed to identify that as cash. So it's not a lot of money relative to the benefit. We're getting $60,000. We're putting in $6,000. So those are the 2 main changes. Other than that, the work is pretty consistent with what you saw before. There have been some slight adjustments in the budget. We did get some very helpful input from Jeff about the kinds of activities that and the cost of those activities. His firm will not be bidding on the project because Jeff's involved in helping to oversee it as a member of the Planning Commission, the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, but it was super helpful to have his professional guidance on what the activities were and the relative costs. So we would have some basis for estimating those. So in terms of getting from here to the approval of the select board, I do think they will want to know that you all have seen and are comfortable with the changes. We also will need a letter from the chair of the Planning Commission, just indicating that you all are in favor of support or comfortable with this proposal. I don't think it needs to be a long letter, but that would be helpful as well. Ultimately, there will need to be a motion from the select board in a specific format to approve it. And I think my sense is they would feel a lot more comfortable knowing that you all had sort of blessed it as well, since you all are closer to this. And then in terms of the hearing, Brian and I are happy to take the lead in providing a presentation about the kind of just basically the background for this. What is the need for affordable housing? What is our overall strategy? What is the site? What do we plan to do on this site? Why is it helpful? How do we plan to mitigate concerns about environmental issues and about environmental justice? So if that is amenable to you, I think you all will be running the hearing, but we're happy to contribute in that way.
Yeah, I think that would certainly be helpful, and I think that would give people the background. Are you planning? It may not be legally needed in terms of warning the public hearing, but are you planning a little background thing on the listserv to point people at the public hearing, or just to get? Use the opportunity to publicize, I guess, or to bring the issue to the fore.
So the Pam has sent to the listserv the information about the hearing, and we will. I will encourage her to send a reminder out. So that was the plan, but I was not planning on and there is a copy of the proposal available on the website, and the materials all in the list. The listserv posting pointed people to the material. So yeah, I was not planning to do any kind of addition.
What do people think? I don't, you can do the public hearing in the minimalist version, which is, you may not get very many people, if any, to show up, and you slide through and rubber stamp and say we did our public hearing, you know, or you can really try and beat the bushes and say, okay, here's what we're talking about, people. Here's what the project looks like. And if you want to ask questions or tell us how you feel, here's the place to do it. And, you know, your public hearing may be a little longer, but you'll get more constructive conversation.
Well, I will say there's been a lot of publicity for the hearing, and we're anticipating quite a number of people attending. So
Okay,
if you have ideas about how to share it, I'm happy to do whatever other things you think are useful. But people have been very interested. There's definitely a lot
Okay.
more interest in housing issues than there were last year before the tax issues really came to the fore. I mean, you saw that in the candidates forum and
Yep.
other places. So I think there's just a lot of, we've been hearing
Yeah.
a lot of interest, and we're expecting a good
so
crowd.
it'll show up on the draft minutes from this meeting. And so Vince, if you can, you know, make a point when we're talking, the hearing is the 19th, and it's about this project on New Boston Road, and it will, you know, answer questions, take comments, and then that's just another place people will see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say this, and then I see Jeff Goodrich's hands up, but I do think, obviously, if something happens during the hearing that causes you to want to rethink, you know, the proposal, then you can make changes then, but it would be nice to have the sort of all the kind of the administrative issues locked up now, so that in the event, for example, you don't have a quorum, you know, at that hearing, and you can't take official action, that you already will have acted.
Jeff?
Yeah, so if we're gonna have a hearing, I assume we're gonna have a quorum. So my issue primarily relates to terms. And I've said to folks over time, with respect to the word bid, there is no such thing. And I would like to encourage everyone, as I've said myriad times, stop using the term bid. For instance, hey, doc, give me a bid to remove my heart and transplant another. Hey, attorney Jeff, give me a bid to facilitate my divorce. I just want to make sure that we're clear on terms. The word bid should not be used going forward. There is no such thing as bid in professional terms. I've said this over and over, and I'm not trying to chastise anyone, but no bids have been received, no bids have been solicited, and no bids can be received in the context of what we're doing. So I want to make sure that going forward, we do not use collectively the term bid. Secondarily, another term, environmental justice. Show me in our zoning regulations where such term is defined. I don't want any politics in anything we're doing. Going forward, we're going to talk about affordable housing. We're not going to do political terms. If we are, this is the first time I'm going to say I'm going to oppose this process if we're going to interject political things that are not defined by our zoning ordinance or some codified regulation. There's no such thing as environmental justice. So I would like us to be clear, we're not in a political discussion. We're trying to engage in affordable housing. Let's move forward in a positive context, please.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the clarifications, Jeff. There was no intent to raise politics. This is a term that other people have used. And I think the concern that has been raised is the proximity of the site to the garage and to the to the transfer station, you know, and the question is that an appropriate place to put affordable housing? So you call it what you want. That's a term that's widely used. It's not a political term, but it's not intended to relate to climate change or anything like that. It's simply a term that has been used. And so we've been asked to preemptively address it. If there's a better term, we're certainly open to it.
Yeah, we can keep the language simple, and there's no, you know, there's no need to use one term or another if you can get the point across. Jeff?
Yeah, it's not a term that's widely used. Factually speaking, I live in this industry to 400 projects a year. It's not a term that is widely used. So I helped Guile Hill plan 150 units on the former dump site. I didn't hear this term then. I can spend a ton of time on this. So let's cut the political crap out of this. Let's just talk about the fact that this is the only town site that's available. Can it work or can't it? Let's keep it simple instead of the political crap.
Yeah, I think we can agree to keep it simple, and that if we have conversations that come up at the public hearing, then I think that we answer the questions in a straightforward, simple way, that it doesn't have to, we don't have to make a big deal of it, is my read. So Jeff Bell, my question, I understand the need to get all our ducks in a row. This group, I guess, let me just ask the group, the relatively minor changes that Jeff just described, does that, do we still have the consensus of this group that we support this project? While we have a quorum here, my preference would be to kind of bundle everything to do with this project, because it's only on the agenda tonight under chair notes. I would prefer to do all the official business about it essentially at the close of the public hearing in a week. But on the off chance we don't have a quorum, I would like to get a sense of the whole group here to say, yes, as it's stated, as the changes that Jeff mentioned, we are still, as a group, fully in support of this. Anybody have a problem with that, or can we go forward with that assumption?
Move forward with
A quick question.
Yeah, Chris?
No, Bob, go ahead, Bob.
I'd say go ahead with your question, but I think we can go ahead as far as my take on it is that I'm fully supportive of going forward with it.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I just want to make sure. The only thing that this is doing is getting the public aware that you guys are applying for a grant to study it, right? It's not a given. And
The grant is for a feasibility assessment to determine if there is a feasible project that could be developed on that piece of land.
right,
Just
And
the
I-
first
and I think
long
since-
process.
To simplify the statement, the PC or the select board at this stage is saying we support the grant application. That this exercise to review this piece of town land for potential use for affordable housing and to apply for a $60,000 grant to do it is, we support that idea. We're not saying the planning commission supports 8 units of housing that look like this and are planted on the hill right here on that site. That's not what we're saying. We don't need to say that now. Let's take it step by step.
right. That's what I just would, if the public, I mean, again, I don't know how effective the publicity has been and whether, and I'm assuming at this point, it's also extremely premature to assume that the road going in is going to be accessed through DPW, which I assume they're not. And the only way you were thinking was it was going to come back from farther back in New Boston, but
Chris, I think the latest thinking is that the best place for the road to go, the most likely place, would be where the trail is now from the corner of New Boston Road and where the entrance to the DPW is. So I don't know if you know that trail, but it's sort of diagonal. And Bry has said that they can move the trail to the other side of the road. So the trail is not an issue, but that's more or less the goal would be to avoid having people to drive past the DPW or drive past the transfer station in order to access the site. But that's really going to be we've identified some potential locations that are quite close to that site, so that would be the shortest road. But the whole purpose of the study is to figure out, are there other places that would be better, right? And so we do have the ability to
Right.
go through a neighbor's land, and so this would be studying different options for that and trying to envision what would be the most cost effective and what would be the best in terms of quality of life for the potential residents.
And then just to understand this clearly, so you guys apply for the grant, or you've gotten the grant, right?
No, we apply for it.
This whole
You've
process
applied for it.
is to
We have
apply.
not
Right.
applied for it
Okay, so
yet.
the whole point, that's right. Right, I'm sorry, that was an obvious. So you apply for the grant and you get it. At that point, do you then come back to the public and say, here's a proposal, and then it goes through the same process if the town actually really wants to go forward with the proposal?
Well,
from the grant.
after the grant, let me try, Jeff, just, say we apply for the grant, we get the grant. Then we have $60,000, $66,000 to spend to do exactly what's laid out. And then what you're going to get is a much more concrete set of options and answers. One of them may be, no way you're going to fit houses up there. The soils are terrible. You can't get a road in, whatever. Or it's going to be, here's what it might look like. Here's how you might get there. Yes, you could put a septic in, but it's going to be this expensive, then I would expect the Affordable Housing Subcommittee to wrap back around with that document in hand and say, here's what we propose as the next steps.
Right, so the whole nother layer after the grant has gone through its process and through all its checking. So this is, so the public meeting that's coming up is really just, this is our idea, we're gonna get the grant, we're gonna look into it, and then we're gonna come back to you with a proposal if all goes well.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
fact, there's likely to be several additional rounds of this,
Right.
because really the next step, if there is a feasible proposal, would be to go through an environmental assessment process, just to study the site, and so there'll be public, process around that, and then ultimately we'll need to figure out, is there a viable project, if the environmental assessment is clean, or if it's easily remedied, then the next step would be, okay, what do we do now, right? And if there's going to be any kind of disposition of that land or any kind of new grants applied for, there'll be more public process. So this is just the very beginning of what could be a long journey.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so
Jeff Goodrich
Jeff?
has his hand up, and I think
yeah, Jeff, and then Vince, and then like I said, we can focus on this topic in a week, but just to get a general sense of the group while we have everybody here. Jeff?
Yeah, two things. So there's only one access to this site currently. It's the access road up to the cell tower. There's no other access that exists. And I would suggest that environmental considerations suggest that's the way things are going to go if it works. Having said that, the Affordable Housing Subcommittee answers to the Planning Commission, which then answers to the Select Board. So to the extent this grant is essentially approved, for lack of a better way to say it, then I presume that Brennan would reach out to Jan and that the Planning Commission would decide who's going to help Brennan administer this grant. It may or may not be members of the Planning Commission. It may or may not be members of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. So I just want to make sure, given our agenda items that are forthcoming, that we keep in mind that this is a subset of this Planning Commission, which is subservient to the Select Board.
Mm-hmm. My understanding in terms of the grant details, what it says in the application is the contact person is Brian Loeb as a member of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, is the immediate in-town contact person. Is that correct, Jeff?
Brennan Duffy is running the show for this project.
Right.
And in the context that anything the Affordable Housing Subcommittee does, it has to be previously approved and endorsed by the Planning Commission.
Right. So so Brennan has asked that one of us serve as the contact person, just so that he doesn't have to be that person who the state would contact with questions. It doesn't involve any authority other than to get phone calls from the state and be a conduit, right? No, the Affordable Housing Subcommittee is not making any decisions that aren't going through the PC, so don't worry about that. Brennan, we're working with Brennan. Brennan has expressed his desire to have an outside consultant serve as the official administrator of the grant, doing all of the things that are the sort of the administrative side of it and making sure project management happens. But, you know, you all, to the extent that you and Brennan agree, and, you know, it would be great if there's a leadership group among us or among you that is overseeing this work and making sure that it's taking place in a way that makes sense. So nobody's giving up any authority or power. I mean, it's simply a matter of making sure that you know, the technical administrative side is taken care of in a way that allows Brennan to feel comfortable with this. And then I think they would welcome input from all of you. In how to-
Jan, the basic issue is the previous select board chair was expressing concerns and there was other support for that. So as we've discussed as a planning commission, we're trying to establish protocols for subcommittee roles. That's all I'm trying to bring about
Yeah.
for select board endorsement.
Yeah, so let's take this one step at a time. I think there are important issues around managing the grant once we get the grant. We're talking right now about the public hearing to do a grant application. We will clearly put this on the agenda for the planning commission, you know, what'll be a couple of months from now at least, that if we get the grant, we'll say, all right, let's iron out exactly who's doing what. Subcommittee, town manager, planning commission, to manage the grant when we get it. Right now, we're just at the apply for it stage. So Vince, you had your hand up?
I just wanted to ask Jeff to clarify the cost change of bringing in the project manager. I heard 6,000, but I wasn't really sure how much that was relative to the entire project. I just want to make sure I get it right for the minutes.
Sure. So the grant application is for $60,000. That has always been, that has not changed. We are asking for $60,000. What has changed is that we have a new $6,000 expense, which is the estimated cost to provide project management support. And that $6,000 is what we will be asking the select board to provide as the town match, which is the requirement of 10% match against the $60,000 grant. So that's the 6,000. So the total costs of the project are $66,000, right? Which comprise the $6,000 town match plus the $60,000 requested funds.
And I think, to be clear, the $6,000 money instead of in-kind staff time is responding to the request of the select board and the town manager. We are asking them to give money because they said they would rather give money than people time. So that's how it came about. Chris?
No, that answered the question, because I was just wondering how it went. Had you not, had Brennan, if he was willing to actually act as the coordinator for this, you guys wouldn't have had to reach out for an outside consultant. Is that?
Right.
That's right.
If some combination of town staff, or if we, had a planning and zoning person, if some combination of town staff could have done the work as in-kind hourly rate up to that was worth $6,000, then that would have been the town's contribution. That was not the case, so it's turned into money. Jeff?
Yeah, there's an in-kind value if, to the extent members of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee and or the Planning Commission contribute their volunteer time. Jeff LaBelle has value, Brian Loeb has value, I have value, Jan, you have value to the extent we serve, and there is an in-kind value that we can ascribe in the future.
Yeah. Okay.
True.
All right. Can we nip this one off as long as everybody is supportive and hasn't changed their opinion based on these minor changes? Then we know the sense of the group. I would ask certainly if people could attend on the 19th so that we have a quorum. It will make for a much more productive meeting and hearing. So please try to do that. Anything else on this topic? Or we'll move on. All right, thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, the next thing, just on my notes, is relative to Connecticut River Dam relicensing. I had asked, Ernie is the one who volunteered to be our rep for the Connecticut River issues. I asked him with an email today whether he could do an update for us, but clearly he didn't respond and he's not here tonight. But my concern is, and maybe others have data on this, the clock has started ticking on the public comment period for the Wilder Dam relicensing. And that's a 60-day public comment period that ends April 22nd. Now, we will have another meeting before April 22nd, but that's not a lot of time to make whatever comments the Planning Commission wants to make. Now, the Conservation Commission is quite active in this. I know Linwood, the Conservation Commission member who last select board meeting was appointed to the River Commission, is involved in this. I know the select board is talking about this. So I would ask the group, what do we want to do relative to Planning Commission comments to the Wilder Dam relicensing? And we can, you know, I can try and get Ernie to bring us up to date more. I did not dig in to what the other groups are doing because Ernie was doing that. But does anybody else have any background or any thoughts on it?
All I can say is it's a very powerful group. So, you know, last time when they were trying to get a break on the taxes, I mean, they fought a lot of towns up and down the Connecticut. So chances are, I'm not quite sure what kind of fight we are going to be able to put up. I don't know, why would anybody want to fight it? So I'm
Well,
not quite sure. Is it a
I
simple
think,
yes
you
or
know,
no? Or-
Well, my question in response to kind of what is this? How would the Planning Commission be thinking about this? What comes to my mind is, you know, obviously we've got town plan references to shoreline, to flooding, to natural habitats, and so if the relicensing was going to radically change the way they manage the dam, or how much they could change the water levels or anything, the flow of the river, then we would want to make a statement that in accordance with the town plan, here are the sorts of things that we feel are important to Norwich. I believe the Conservation Commission is doing that. So anyway, Jeff?
This all came up, you know, I'm sorry, Jeff, I didn't see that. This all came up when I was a lister, so 4 years ago. The regulations haven't changed, and these guys are, like I said, these guys have got pretty hefty lawyers, and they've already been through
The
it.
difference is this clearly didn't happen 4 years ago in this specific thing, because this relicensing is for, I believe, a 40-year license, which means this doesn't happen very often, this actual relicensing activity. Jeff?
Yeah, so in various ways addressing the relicensing over my not quite, probably 30 or more years in this quasi judicial role. The main issue has been the river going up, river going down, river going up, river going down. And so the hydraulic bearing on the riverbanks has been the issue over my entire time with this subject. The dam has lowered water levels for the Connecticut Lake, if you will, up the river to accommodate storm events. The real issue is river going up, down for stream bank erosion.
Yep. Yep.
I'm
So
not quite sure.
is-
I'm just curious, what's the alternative? If we all say no, some other organization, I guess, are we trying to work out a better contractual agreement with them? Because I don't see us turning around and saying, I'm sorry, we're not going to renew your license.
Well, and
Just-
it's not ours, it's not the town of Norwich, it's certainly not the town of Norwich Planning Commission
Exactly.
decision, but FERC, the federal group that does the relicensing, has asked for public comment. We're not under the illusion that anybody is going to just take our word and do exactly what we ask.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't say something if we want to get our voice at least heard a little bit.
Right.
But,
But our regulations haven't changed in the last 5 years, and that would have been brought up when they were, approached us 5 years ago. So,
Let's get I'll query Ernie again, and I'll query the Conservation Commission just to make sure that I think Jeff's right that the issue is simply the perennial issue of what are the allowable water level changes that are part of the license, and is the new license different? If the new license says you can do this much water up, water down, and it's the same as it has been for X number of years in the past, then,
Hey, Jan, I would say more directly, help us stabilize our riverbanks as the water goes up and the water goes down.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I know that there was a whole issue of that where they had a big barge out there putting rocks along the banks, quite a while ago to that end.
We do a lot of work for bank stabilization. So, I'm just saying. And I've had owners say, can I sue the dam? Can I sue, whatever. The
Yeah.
relicensing paradigm considers stabilizing our banks. As the water goes up and down, vegetative and otherwise.
Well, let me do this, because we do have another meeting before anything's due. So I will get Ernie and any other Norwich commenters understand what's going on, and make sure that we can present something to this group at the April meeting that allows us to if we just want to add our voices to, the Conservation Commission, here's what they're going to say, and the Planning Commission wants to sign on, fine. Just saying, Bob, did you say something?
And I was just gonna say, if you want any help, if there's any existing changes to their management practices that are coming up as an issue, or if they haven't followed through with previous commitments, and that is sort of something that's being talked about with, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
I'm happy to
I
help.
don't
I'm happy to
know.
help out if you want someone else to, talk to Conservation Commission or someone else.
That would be
help out
great,
on
but
front.
that would be very helpful, Bob. If you want to, coordinate with Ernie, because he took this on and he's
Sure.
looked at some, but if you catch up with Ernie, and really what I'd like is somebody to come back to this group at our April meeting and say, here's what the issues are, that affect Norwich. Here's what other groups in Norwich are doing. And here are some options for what the Planning Commission could either just sign on to or add to, or say, we're satisfied with what's going on, and then we'll be in a position to do something before the 22nd.
Okay.
So that'd be great. Thank you, Bob. Chris, you have something on that?
yeah, I would add to that, and not necessarily just reach out to Norwich groups. Quite frankly, when this whole thing came up, there was a lot of conversation about communities all the way up, way past, to the next dam. Bradford, Orford. So I don't know if you guys are up to it. You and Ernie, if you make a quick phone call to the planning commissions, Thetford, I know Bradford went through a lot of stuff because they are definitely in a floodplain and had a lot of problems. So you might find out what their feelings are.
Yeah, or start with TROC and see what they already know. and then say, oh, Bradford's doing this. TROC may be a good point for that. Jeff?
Is Bradford in T-Rock?
I don't know how far north T-Rock goes, actually.
Yeah, it goes beyond Bradford. So anyway, so there's a legislative paradigm that governs the river. So any river bank project falls under the local area advisory committee. It's the Connecticut River Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
So this is governed by in both for us, both Upper Valley Lake, Sunapee, and Two Rivers are involved in this paradigm. Right now, there is a defunct status for some of that, but the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services on the New Hampshire side governs every single project on the New Hampshire side. So if you make any improvement to a riverbank, it has to go through the LAC to the extent the LAC exists, local area, the local advisory committee, and conservation commissions, and then other zoning elements within communities. And then it's the Wetlands Bureau and possibly Shoreland, and perhaps all of those on the Vermont side. On the New Hampshire side, it's a different story, but there's a series of layers that govern all of this today.
Okay, so let's take Bob up on his offer and let's get some information back at the next meeting, but let's understand for the relicensing piece that has a deadline on April 22nd, what makes sense for the Planning Commission to do. It's obviously a bigger issue than just that, but let's get us a little more information for our next meeting. So thank you, Bob. Okay, just one quick report on the topic. So the preferred siting letter for Lamperti 150 kW project that we approved, I signed it. Select Board has approved it. The letter's been signed. Aaron has it, and he's started with TRORC. So that, just so you know, the Select Board went ahead and signed it, and that's moving. So that's all for my topics. So the next thing is subcommittee updates. And before we do specific subcommittees, either multimodal or solar, I do want to talk about membership. I do want to get us to talk about the target number of people in these committees. And then if we want to have public members or other members to make a concrete statement about that so that we can publicize that and say, hey, we're looking for a couple members of this committee or a couple members of that committee. So that I'd like to open up the topic just for the statement we made at the last meeting, which was, yeah, there seems to be good reason to have a target of, say, 5 members on a subcommittee, of which at least 1, 2, some number are Planning Commission members. The Planning Commission is authorized to appoint members to its subcommittees. So that's kind of where we stand now in my mind. What do people think about making that more official?
So moved.
So can you, for Vince's sake at least, can you move something more specific than what I just blah for 2 minutes?
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion. This seems redundant, rhetorical, and absurd, but I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Commission appoints subcommittee members for subcommittees the Planning Commission decides to create, up to at least 5 members, including at least 1 member of the Planning Commission.
Okay. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
I'll
All right. Okay.
second Bob.
Bob wins the seconding race. Okay. So let's open that up for discussion. What do people think?
I absolutely makes sense for open meeting law issues and all that.
Okay. Any other select board comment, or I'll let Linda Gray has her hand up. Linda?
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know something. I'm not sure that I agree with it, but in the packet for the select board, you know, they, excuse me, from the last meeting in February, and they have some stuff that relates to committees and they're trying to review that. And so I'm just trying to look at it now. So they're saying they want all subcommittees created by a parent group will be current members of the parent group with an expired terms. I remember that Jeff Lubell,
Mhm.
at that meeting, he raised a concern with them to say, hey, if you do that, that means that he is not a member of the planning commission, and so therefore he couldn't be on the affordable housing subcommittee, and that would be very difficult for him in terms of his own personal time available and stuff. And so I just want to caution you that it
Oh, I know.
looks as if the select board saying, hey, you cannot have people who are not members for say the planning commission. You know, if you have subcommittees, all the members of that subcommittee have to be planning commission members. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So let me answer that, because I did that several select board meetings before the one where Jeff Lubell just spoke. It's the draft select board handbook that Marcia was pulling together that has been in the packet a couple of times. I spoke to it several meetings ago and made it very clear that that the planning commission did not agree with it, that we clearly felt empowered to make our own subcommittees and name members that were not members of the planning commission. I was told specifically at that time that this handbook was a very early draft, that it was going to get cleaned up a little bit more and then be sent out officially for comment. But it was not official. It was not approved. It was not the final word. So I think that is, there are some people that on the select board that feel that way. That's part of why I'm asking this group explicitly to make the statement that the planning commission can create its own subcommittees, that the way we want to do that is that we can appoint, the planning commission can appoint. We're not saying that to be clear, the Affordable Housing Subcommittee cannot appoint its own members, but the planning commission can appoint members of that. But we are empowered to do that. There has to be at least one planning commission member. That planning commission's member, part of their responsibilities is to be responsible for OML awareness, that they know what the rules are and they make sure that subcommittee follows the rules. But so it is true, as Linda said, we need to make this statement explicitly because there are open questions on the table about people want to do it differently. Jeff?
Yeah, so I would say whatever Marcia's thinking is unlawful. If there are other select board members that agree with her unlawful premise, I'm not aware of who they are. And given the unlawful nature, like the OML fight that we've had in this community, I'm not sure I really care what the select board thinks. Having said that, there's precedent. And if I look at Jeff Lubell as a member of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, the only member of an existing board that's on that committee is me. So effectively, if the unlawful premise of the select board that Marcia has promulgated comes to fruition, we have to disband the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. I'd just like to say historically, and Jan, you can cut me off anytime, we've had the corridor committee, the bike ped committee, the bandstand committee, all appointed by the select board, and there have been other committees, none of which included a member of the select board. So the preposterous nature of this premise, I'll just leave it at that. going
Yeah.
forward. The Conscom does the same thing with its Trails Committee, the Mount Fry Committee,
Yeah.
yada, yada.
Yeah, I think we
One
should,
more thing, Jan.
Sure.
There's no basis for saying we need to have one member of the planning commission on our subcommittees. I simply offer that given the context of what you suggested with respect to adherence to the law.
yeah. Yeah, so I think that is, I think it's a good statement. I think our point of making planning commission specific subcommittees is that it should be an issue that's pertinent to the planning commission. So it makes perfect sense that a member of the planning commission is interested and can be the hook, the liaison, however you want to put it, back to the host of the planning commission. So I like that in there. The other thing that I would agree with, and we talked about it with the solar siting committee, I do think that it's just general best practice, however informal it is, we talked about it at the last meeting, for subcommittees to have some form of a charter or a charge, or just could be a 3-sentence blurb of here's what we got formed for and here's what we're working on, here's our topic. I think that is just best practice of a group that tries to get something done. So that would be the only other thing I would add. It doesn't have to be part of the motion, but it's, you know, how we propose to do subcommittees. Chris?
So I guess my question would be, how fluid can these committee appointments be? And I'll give you an example. So we're already engaged in the solar siting committee. And so, you know, the outset of our meeting was a little off. So we decided to just go with the 3 of us. And so at this point, I just want to try and just work out an example. I love examples because, okay, let's just say we kind of have now decided that we're going to go forward with having more committee members. Now, we could actually, at our next solar siting committee, you know, Linda's here, Cheryl's here, Susan, if anybody says, and we, at that point, do we actually just say, is it only at the time the committee has been created? Or that's why I said the fluidity of this. So if our next meeting, do we say, listen, we're opening our membership up. We're not just going to stick to the 3 and we're going to take 5 more people, or do you limit the membership? I'm just I'm uncertain as to how the membership grows or doesn't grow, and if there's going to be a limit capped, or again, can you just suddenly say, somebody comes up to you and says, I'm really interested in being on your committee, can I be appointed? I'm not gonna, I just kind of knock out those kind of.
No, it's a very good question, and I think I would say one thing would be that it as long as we're clear, that's the planning commission appoints members to planning commission subcommittees. So we're always talking about that, not this sort of this Russian dolls thing where the subcommittee appoints people to the subcommittee and then you go from that. So it's the planning commission, but it's a very good question to say, okay, we think 5 as a minimum is a good number for OML, allowing 2 people to talk, and you know, it's more constructive. And I would add to Chris's example for the sake of the conversation, so say you have a solar siting committee, that's the topic, that's the unifying theme of that group. Okay, that committee now says we want to do an enhanced energy plan. So there's a project, and it's got, and call it a 6-month project that has a chunk of work to be done. And we may say, oh, we'll take all the help we can get on this project. We want lots of public participation. Does that mean we want 7 or 9 or whatever members for that chunk of work? And so it's a good question. How much, how flexible, how does it ebb and flow? Jeff?
No, but I'm also saying, oops, sorry, didn't see you.
Oh, go ahead, Chris, just clarify the question.
Well, no, because I just want to go back to the solar siting committee is a great example. Again, even though you're now suggesting that you take the solar siting committee and then that committee creates another committee.
No,
for
no,
the
I'm not saying
enhanced
that.
energy.
No, I'm
And
not
so
saying
what
that.
I was thinking is that the solar, so let's just say, like I said, the example is the committee already had set up the premise that we're only just gonna have the three. But now if we sort of change this idea in our next meeting, can we just say, yeah, or we can post on the town website or somewhere and say, we're gonna open it up to, 5 members or 7, do you set how many people, and then is that for a certain amount of time? I guess
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
just seems to
No, you're
the
right.
revolt
The terms question.
potential
I mean,
is
yeah, the things that were brought up as part of the handbook conversation, and then I'll get to Jeff. And the charter was one. So number of members, who can appoint the members? Does the subcommittee have a charter? And then terms of the members. Those were all the topics that were put down, and then there was various like statutory background and so forth. We know that for the planning commission. But so the question of terms of members, number of members, terms of members is definitely a good one to put on the table. Jeff?
Yeah, so my motion contemplates only a minimum number of 5. Given past experience, I don't care how many members participate. I can't speak for the solar paradigm, but the bike ped committee that the select board adopted, and the corridor committee and the bandstand committee. Once the bike ped committee transitioned to the planning commission, we had from, 7 to 11 members. The more people we had present, the better. There was no conflict for more members. So I think in terms of terms, it would be a function of when the select board or the planning commission says, okay, we're done with this subcommittee.
Okay. And I would point out, as we said before, we're talking about advisory subcommittees, that the voting doesn't matter so much. So I said 5 or 7 or 9 going to odd numbers automatically, but it doesn't matter. We're talking about the planning commission maintains the authority and the voting authority. So if you have 8 members and you want to do a straw vote for something, fine, but it doesn't matter because the planning commission is the one that's going to take the advisory thing from the subcommittee and act on it and do something. So I think as long as that's clear, it can be pretty informal. So I guess I would ask, so let's say that we do I have a second on that motion? I can't remember.
It was Bob.
and the motion was
Okay.
just more than 5. Can you just reread the motion?
Yeah, so Vince, confirm you got it.
The planning commission will appoint members to its subcommittees, and those will have at least 5 members and 1 member of the planning commission.
Okay. And so right now we have 3. We have solar siting, multimodal, and affordable housing. And I would argue that land use has currently been pulled back into the mothership of the planning commission until we decide to do something otherwise. So we have those 3. Do we want to, we'll say that in the minutes, it'll say this motion. Do we want to, if we approve this motion, make a concrete statement asking for people to throw their names in the hat if they want to join the solar committee or the multimodal? Chris?
Well, that's what I think that's what I was just about to bring up, that I would expect that, any kind of committee, you would have to advertise it through the town website at some point so that it's not looking like we're just whoever is on, and say, well, you're on Zoom right now. Do you want to be on the meeting? So it would seem, for public purpose, for the to be as transparent as possible, I would think that we would have to send something out via Pam or Miranda saying that we are looking for we're opening up committee membership. And do they
No.
have to fill out an application, or is it just they come to a meeting and we just appoint them?
I mean, my sense, and it's up to us to a certain degree, and we want to be clear about what we're taking on. But I think if the planning commission is talking about advisory, topic-driven subcommittees to help us do our work, and we are asking for public participation in the form of people who would like to be members of these, we can do something on the website. We certainly will have something in the minutes. I'm perfectly happy to do a listserv post by the
Right.
chair. The chair can say, here's what's going on in the planning commission. Here are the key topics. These have and so clearly the sidewalks topic on multimodal, the preferred siting on an energy plan, that's the whole point. It's a way of publicizing and generating public participation. And so
Yeah.
we would raise the flag and say, hey, people, here are the things we're working on. Who wants to join us?
Yeah, I would just at least make sure that it's somewhere officially on the town website that the committee is open. And, since I think it sounds like, we'll take more than 5 people. So if more people just come later on, then we're just saying, whatever. So I would just say officially make sure, putting it on the listserv is one thing, but at least I would suspect that you would want to advertise it in one way or another on the website, just so that people have the opportunity.
Yeah. Jeff?
Yeah, so using Affordable Housing Subcommittee and other subcommittees, there's no application process. You simply reach out to the Planning Commission, like Gordon Greenwood, Ralph Hybels. I want to be a part of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, and the various committees I've listed have been similar. We just want help to the extent you can be a regular person. I've reached out to Rob Gear accordingly. I'm not objecting to the select board's process by any means, that you list your irrelevant degrees and jobs and how much naval you have. That's all fine. That's just not what we're doing.
Yeah, I think I would not advocate for an application. I would be a little wary, Chris, just of if we said, oh, we want to get Miranda, which means Brennan and the town manager, to participate in us creating.
No, I don't.
subcommittees.
I'm not
I just
agreeing
think
to-
that may open up a can of worms because.
Oh yeah, no. I'm saying, given what Linda has said, that they're trying to make the whole thing more formal. I think it would be ridiculous for people to have to send in an application. The only thing I'm saying is just to let people. I think it would be just fair to make sure that the public knows that we are looking, because again, when we were doing the solar siting subcommittee, as you know, it was a little peculiar. So I just want to make sure that it's not going to make it look like we're just doing appointments randomly, that everybody in the public is well aware of it.
Jan, we came out of a tough time, so let's move forward.
Yeah.
And to the extent folks want to participate, let's invite them and encourage them to join. It's really that.
Totally.
I totally agree. I mean, I think that what I would like,
Totally.
these are advisory groups. Somebody is going to ask the question, well, what does it matter if I'm a member or not? And the answer should be not that much. It's a statement of commitment. It's a statement of sustained commitment. It means you're going to come, you're going to do some work, you care about the topic. That's what it means. It's not you get to, veto power over something or voting power. It's a statement of participation and commitment. And to that degree, we want to encourage it and we don't want to put up roadblocks.
Yeah, and all differing opinions.
Yeah. Okay. Can we call that question? We got a motion. All right.
I second,
those-
Mike.
Yeah, we got a second. All right. I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor of that, the motion as stated?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Unanimous. Great. So let's jump into the meat of the subcommittees themselves. What does multimodal have to report back to the full PC on?
Vince, I have a chart.
Oh, yeah, that's-
But if you- I don't know if you want to.
No, so let's start with that. That sounds good.
So, so Andy Shearer, Jan, Vince and I met Friday, and I was blessed by both Vince and Jan helping me refine my approach. Greatly blessed. And so one of the things we talked about was a simplified charter. And so I'd like to introduce to our next subcommittee meeting something like, in this draft context, an overview that says, our subcommittee will assist the planning commission with gathering and understanding, and I'll give you this if you want. I'll send it to you by email if you want. But with gathering, understanding documentation related to multimodal facilities for vehicle, bicycle, pedestrian, and bus facilities in town, and adjacent towns, and in our region. Assist the PC with capital considerations for multimodal facilities. From our last meeting, because legislatively, the Planning Commission has a role in capital improvement planning, and then assist the PC with prioritizing multimodal facility planning, implementation, and maintenance, and then agency coordination in concert with the PC, because that's kind of our next step. Work with the town staff to assemble and assess information related to multimodal facility projects, implementation, and maintenance. A little redundancy. Work with neighboring towns to assemble and assess information related to the same. Work with regional planning commissions serving neighboring towns to assemble and assess the same. Work with the Norwich Fire District to assemble and assess the same. And then work with the PC to address multimodal considerations. All submitting to the Planning Commission.
Yeah. Any thoughts from people on that? I would thank you,
Nice.
Jeff, for crafting that. I do think it's very helpful to have something that simple, that straightforward, that says, somebody says, what's the multimodal committee for? What's it working on? Say here, clear, straightforward.
Hey, Jan, I have one quick follow-up because of the time with you guys, you all. So my perception, so as I shared at our little subcommittee meeting, I was truly impressed by the way Brennan Duffy led the charge for the Kids Bridge, where this is my perception, where he engaged folks in the community. He appointed a project manager in Bridge McDowell. We had a bunch of volunteers, and a bunch of volunteers made it happen with staff support. So I'm hopeful that that model, and I'm thankful and hopeful that that model will be used going forward, to the extent that if we're going to put in a 4 or 5 foot gravel shoulder, hypothetically along Beaver Meadow Road, that's something we can get done quick, fast, and in a hurry without a lot of money. So I'm hopeful that perhaps the multimodal subcommittee could take a simple look at that. The only issue along that entire corridor, because I know it so well, as does Vince and Bob, is it's just drainage. It's not that complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that I really like what Jeff was saying about the Kids Bridge, and really the model of town staff and community members getting these simple, common sense community projects done, rather than asking, what's in the way, what would the lawyers say, how many engineers do I need to do this, all sorts of questions and obstructions. We say, who wants to do this? What can they bring to the table? Let's get it done. So I really agree with that model. Vince, did you have other comments on that or on the multimodal?
No, I think I think that is a very good summary of everything that we're looking at doing. And Otherwise, just kind of collecting information from maps from the fire district or from the regional, from T-Rock to kind of get us started going in the right direction of what sort of information is out there as of right now.
So we are, the committee, subcommittee is doing that, is doing the
Yeah.
mapping collection? Data
Yes.
collection?
I'm reaching out to people to see what is in existence.
Okay, great. And then.
Ask
as
Cheryl,
the-
she's on.
Cheryl, yeah, it'd be, well, and then there's the fire district question and so forth. I did want to, I'd said, in the subcommittee meeting, I mentioned that I thought, Pam Smith, the new, select board chair, I wanted to sit down with her and find common ground, but one thing I thought we could, use, to do that with was capital planning. And so I actually have time with Pam on Monday. And that's one thing I'll put on the table to say, clearly, Planning Commission has statutory involvement in capital planning. We seem to have done something roughly resembling capital budgeting in the previous finance cycle, but capital budgeting without a plan first seems a little strange. So I think we can really up our game. It's on the agenda here if we get to it. We may not get to it tonight, but clearly, I would hope the Planning Commission can step into that. And I think that Pam would be very interested in working on that. And so let's use that. And clearly sidewalks and any of these things, the multimodal subcommittee is completely involved in that piece of capital planning.
Yeah, Jan, I just raised my hand. I would defer to you get to that on item 7, so I wasn't going to comment.
Yep.
Is that okay? Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Can I just make a quick comment? I don't know if it's worth, I mean, this would be a little redundant, but if like a word or two in there added, just something slightly like a little future looking, like planning. I mean, really assessment maybe encapsulates it, but if they said also planning, so that no one said they're going outside of their bailiwick if they said something about, well, here's potentially a plan that makes sense given all this information that we've given. If like the Planning Commission is giving the blessing to this subcommittee to do certain work, we also accept and encourage and would feel it right for them to say something about the future rather than just assessing. I mean, not to put down the assessing, it's a lot of work, but that we're also welcoming plans.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's not that we're not just looking at them to solely collate information or something like that. I guess.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that on item 7.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that probably fits into that. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can do it on 7, but I do think clearly in the general conversation about subcommittees of the Planning Commission, we're the Planning Commission. It's a capital P planning, so that means all our subcommittees are going to be focused on some element of planning, some element that flows from town plan, zoning bylaws, capital plan, all the things that we're responsible for. So that certainly should be front and center of our subcommittee definition. Okay,
For these, sorry.
go ahead,
Uh,
Vince.
Just for these charters, is this something that each subcommittee decides on and then it's sent up, I guess, in whatever your listserv post for applications, I guess? Is there something with that?
Planning
I would-
Commission, Planning Commission has endorsed it.
Oh, that's what I'm asking, is what's
Yes.
the procedure on this?
I would say the simple procedure would be that the Planning Commission, we did this initially and the Solar Siting Committee made a charter and gave it back. So the Planning Commission says, man, there's a lot of stuff going on with bike ped multimodal, seems appropriate for subcommittee. Then you get one or a couple of people on the Planning Commission who are interested to raise their hand. You say we're gonna form a subcommittee. That subcommittee is then asked as one of their first activities to draft a charter or a charge for themselves. That comes back to the planning commission for approval, as do any, and then the planning commission can say, all right, we've got a kernel of a start to the group, we've got a charter, we're gonna beat the bushes for a few more members, and then put them on the list here to get reports back to the PC on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. So yes, I think the charter is drafted by the subcommittee for itself and then approved by the PC would be my proposal.
That sounds good. So next meeting, we'll make this official as far as as a draft, make it an official draft. And then present it in time to get into the minutes for the next PC meeting to be
Yep.
thumbs up or thumbs down when discussed. Okay.
That would be the way I see it. I think that's a good model. We did it with solar sighting. So it's a valid question, and then we can move on to solar sighting for a minute. But do we need to do anything about affordable housing subcommittee? Do they have a charter? Is the membership clear right now? Jeff's the PC member. So is anything needed to make that subcommittee follow the motion we just passed?
So, Jan, the answer would probably yes. Because it's been pretty ad hoc, it's been very highly functioning. Nonetheless, I think the answer would be yes, so it's not gonna be that hard.
Okay. So we can get, I mean, Jeff Flubell's the chair of that group, and we can, it'll be in the minutes. Here's how we want to do our subcommittees. And then I can just reach out to him and say, what do we need to do to get you to play by those guidelines? Okay. Anything else on multimodal? All right. Solar sighting. Chris, you want to start it?
No, I think you should start. I mean, again, I think I think that we should have you. I'm not sure how to begin this one, because personally, I think that the ruling is going to have
Yep.
a fairly large impact on what you were just about to talk to us about.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's an
I'm sure-
interesting point. So maybe I'll try to give background about what I thought we would be able to do. And it was only limited. This meeting is not the subcommittee meeting. So the idea is not to get into details here. But as an update of what the committee was doing, we talked about, and this group agreed that to the project of updating our town energy plan to be an enhanced energy plan. So that was what was on the table. Then at the most recent subcommittee meeting, you can see it in the minutes, we said, all right, one of the things we're going to do as part of that project is remove the default preferred siting blanket statement about town lands and replace it with a more, you have to say more at that point. The word default takes up makes it so you don't have to say much more. If you take it out, then we have to say more. Many neighboring towns do this 3-tiered method: prohibited, preferred, constrained, or something in between. So I just volunteered to pull from neighboring towns that are enhanced energy plans that have solar siting criteria, and that's what was in the packet. Now, before this group, I was not intending at all, and that's why I said it in that introductory note, I was not intending for this group to go into any detail of that draft. That's subcommittee work. even before we get to Chris's point about the change in the rules from the PUC. But so the only piece or two things for this group, one is to be aware that that's what the subcommittee's doing, that we're trying to do some kind of meat and potatoes editing now of new solar siting criteria. And the second is the policy statement of removing the default preferred solar. So if this planning commission doesn't agree with that policy to say, we're going to take out default and we're going to replace it with something else, then that I think is a high level policy decision that this group needs to. Otherwise, the subcommittee could do a month's worth, 2 months worth of work, and this group wouldn't agree with it, and we'd be wasting our time. So I think that's a policy decision that should be put in front of this group, and that to some degree is independent of the rules. So let's just talk about that for a minute. Jeff?
Yeah, so Jan, I inferred from the packet that what you just said is part of this agenda. And I think it's very important, as you say, either way, because if the planning commission agrees with that, with a language modification for the preferred siting changes, ultimately, we're going to be recommending something to the select board. And given the, what's the word, the glacial pace at which we collectively function, if this is something we're sincerely committed to, this needs to be on our agenda until we hammer it out. And Chris, I thank you for smiling at some of my snark.
But so just to clarify, Jeff, are you talking about the specific statement to remove the default statement in the town plan, or are you talking more broadly about the details about?
I am, Jan. So if in theory, the critical criterion, because it's one, is the preferred siting issue, we could carve that out quickly and throw it at the select board, do public hearings, and modify the town plan accordingly. So my perception of folks' concerns, that's not about taking sides, is that's a critical issue. And to the extent it is, I think we can focus on that. And then the rest of the language for future town plan elements can evolve. But we can say today, we're not going to do this preferred siting thing on town property as it is. We want to just, carve it out. Select board, please make that change.
Mm-hmm. Chris?
I don't think we have a choice. This has to go before the select board because we have to amend based on the new ruling. I think number one, we need to get a grasp on what exactly the changes are. I read that thing over and over again, and it's, to me, typical of that kind of statutory authority, or however you want, the ruling, so to speak, is, it's not above my pay grade, but it certainly, it makes my eyes cross when I'm trying to follow the wording, and then I realize that they've obviously planted some ambiguities in it, because I'm not quite sure when they say they've removed the authority of the town to put it in the preferred siting in the plan, but then they referred back to that the legislative body, the PC and TROC, have to follow policies based on a plan. And so it's really, I think I really want some clarity, and I was hoping that you might have talked to Peter Gregory today and asked him how he felt other towns were
Hey, folks,
sort of.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying something different. I might agree. I might agree with Chris that, as my body changes and I'm trying to evaluate the dynamics of my underwear and how it stretches and washes, that's going to take us months to work through, maybe years. And I'm not trying to be facetious at all because, you know, I'm sharing, Vince, this is what you have to look forward to. Anyway, if this preferred siting thing is a real issue, then let's just focus on that without regard to, you know, spending months and months and months trying to figure out what it says, talking to people and say to the select board, this is the one element of the town plan we want to change. They can take it up or down. We can start the public process, because if that's a real issue for us, let's get her started.
No, it's regulatory, Jeff. The state is telling us we have to change it. That's what I'm saying. We have to go before the select board. This is a regulatory
Well,
change.
Right. But I just want to clarify, so that we're talking about the same thing. That there's if we leave the changes to 5/100 off to the side for just a second and say, what would we be talking about if that wasn't there? There's a simple single word in the town plan, a couple places, and the word is default. And that is where it says that all the lands in the town, unless they're, you know, Ridgeline or the Norwich Green, are default preferred solar. That the simple policy question that says we are proposing to yank that word out, is that something, you know, that's the proposal. So first the question goes to the planning commission. The planning commission can say, yes, we agree with that proposal. Again, we will be wasting our time if we take too much time trotting down that road before we check with the select board, which I think is what Jeff is talking about, to say, look, get the simple thing, at least some feedback from the select board, otherwise we're wasting our time. So I think that it's that simple for that piece of it. And I agree, and I think we should look at that. To Chris's point, which I think is also critical, we have a new regulatory context that we are now living in. And it is perfectly possible, if I now leave the default out and say, what do we got to do with our new, the new rules we're living under? What does that do? Our current energy plan could be out of compliance with the new rules, independent of the whole default question. So we need to answer that question. So I would certainly propose, Chris, and I think we can do this. You know, I will reach out to T-Rock and Peter and say, and we can start with Kyle because he was given as our point person, but to say, I assume there's no way we're the only ones asking this question. There has got to be a municipal guide for the changes in 5100. What does it mean to your town? What is T-Rock doing to tell its member towns what this means? There has to be a starting point of information there. So that's on the agenda. That should be on the agenda for the next solar siting meeting, to say, we're going to get that information and start chewing on it. And then we have those two elements. How has the regulatory environment changed? And does that drive us to do something concrete, simple, and soon? And then the default one, we know we want to change, and we can do that pretty clearly and pretty soon.
So I just want to point out that, again, it says, again, this is an interpretation. We got his email. In the red line, they essentially have eliminated, I think this is why Chris wanted us to read it, eliminated the authority of towns to designate preferred sites. So I'm not quite sure why we're even talking about just getting rid of the word default.
Well, and that's why I want
Till I
some,
understand.
yeah, I want a
understand
more
it.
concrete overview. And just for people who don't, you know, what Chris is talking about is Chris Katuki sent a public a letter to the solar siting subcommittee based on reading the draft that you have in your packet. And he was referencing the changes to 5100. He referenced the red line version. you can now pull the official version, Chris, down. There is, if you just type it in, you'll get
Yeah, no,
the
I saw it.
effective March, so effective March 1, and it's effective March 1. So it is the current active regulatory environment is
Yeah.
5100. So
Yeah, and again, so he asked, so did you actually clarify when Chris sent that, he did want this as public comment?
yeah,
as
I did.
opposed-
I went back and forth with them, and he agrees it's appropriate for this, the detail, it's appropriate for the subcommittee meeting. So we'll have his
So the
letter-
subcommittee, or he wanted it in the planning committee, tonight's planning commission?
subcommittee meeting. He agreed that the level of detail that he's talking about in his comments can be rolled into the subcommittee conversation.
Hey,
And-
Jan,
Yeah, Jeff.
I'd like to move along. So to the extent the planning commission is willing to look at our current town plan and remove the word default in a couple of key places,
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to that effect. And I'm glad to have you help me craft that. Otherwise, if there's no second, and I'd say, don't offer, I don't care what the legislature thinks. I don't care what this current ruling is. It's going to be months and months and months. The main issue is what's gotten us here to date, which Jan has emphasized, is the default preferred siting in our town plan seems to need a minor revision without regard to what the PUC has decided. So I'd like to make a motion if that's appropriate. If it's not, I'll just step back.
I mean, I think we can. I would like to get a sense of the group, and whether that's a motion or a sense of the group. I would like a sense of this group that we have agreement on that policy statement. And then I would ask, as the PC, I think it's appropriate for the PC to then say, yes, we agree with that goal. We agree with that action. And we are asking our subcommittee that are getting up to expertise on this. We're asking our subcommittee to now, with that guidance, propose exactly what to do next and to look into these other factors that might affect it. But thank you to the PC for confirming that important policy. So is that, before we get to the motion, and before we even ask for a second, can we just do it as a sense of the group? Do we need a motion?
Consensus.
Okay. All right. So is there anybody that would like just that item, the word default, in a couple key places? We know what it means. We know what it does. Is there anybody that wants to raise their hand and say, no, I want to advocate for keeping that? Okay. So if I think we take that as a sense of the planning commission. Thank you for that. That's what I wanted, was a policy. It's a policy level decision. This is the group that should do it. Now I think the subcommittee needs to go and digest some new information, both that piece from the PC and the 5100 change. And that's what that group is for. So we will take that on and we'll come back in a month and tell you what we've got. Okay, thank you. All right, that's subcommittee updates. Now we've got, I just want to look, I am going to, if we just look at our agenda, Jeff, I'm going to say that neither of us will argue against not worrying about number 8.
Well, but yeah,
I just want to frame it because I don't think we caught up on our minutes last meeting, so I'm not too worried about that.
yeah, but Jan, process wise, so do we want to skip over planning and zoning staff?
No, I'm not skipping anything. I just want to time it so that I want to talk about planning, zoning staff and just a little bit on capital planning, and I don't see anything else that's critical. That's my point.
Go for it.
Okay. So planning and zoning staff, as we said last meeting, I did it as a announcement that the candidate said no. And then we agreed to put it on the agenda. So that's what this is. So I would open it up for discussion. As far as I know, the existing job description that was posted, that an offer was made to that candidate is still sitting there on the town website as an open position. I haven't convened, we haven't talked with Brennan about when to re-advertise or what to do about it. So it's just sitting there. So I guess I would open up the question around, what do we want to do as a planning commission for this staff? Do we want to propose anything different than simply riding along as we are now? Vince?
I just,
Without getting into specifics, generally, was there any response from previous candidates to why they would not have taken, why I guess, any criticism of the listing? If there was any, and we've talked about differences from expectations to what the reality was. And was there any feedback speaking to that?
So the short answer is no. I mean, I think the people that applied and then pulled back, or applied, got an offer and then said no, my sense, it was all personal. It was not, oh, wait, we didn't understand your job, or we thought we didn't want to work for Norwich, or any, it was individuals who said, no, I don't want to do that. That was my sense so we didn't get any feedback that said they were doing it for some other reason. Chris?
no, I guess I would go back to our original conversation that we seem to have belabored over for 2 months, was that we just wanted a zoning administrator. And clearly, we're already showing signs that this title is not working. So I guess I would think if the board wants to talk about, reopen the idea of just going after a zoning administrator again. I mean, we could be like this for months.
Well, we
And-
have been like this for a year or so, at least.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
I'm curious how, I still don't know how we went from our entire group discussing the idea, we only wanted a zoning administrator, you came back and said, Brennan he wants a director, we'll be able to get better qualified candidates. It's obviously not working. So I almost wonder if we shouldn't revisit the whole idea and say, no, let's go back. The planning commission just wanted a ZA and try it out. I don't know why we keep
No, I
fussing around
think
with this.
No, I said that's partly what I wanted to throw down on the table, was whether we wanted to reawaken that. Jeff?
Yeah, I'd like to reawaken that on a future agenda item. I have agreed and tried, and I'm only one vote.
Okay, yeah, and I think the point is, we gave it a wholehearted try. We, the planning commission, we said what we wanted. We listened to the town manager. The town manager said what he wanted. We went along with that. We had a job description. We interviewed. We went, and we are where we are. So it certainly begs the question of saying, how about we try something different?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I had some lima beans. I wanted some smoked baked beans, and I'd like to get back to the smoked baked beans, and let's see what happens.
Okay, I'm working with the metaphor, but I can go with it.
You
No,
like-
that one
you-
didn't work so well, Jeff.
you
Use
like
it for
lima-
business. Try another one.
I agree with talking about it some more, but does the group want me to talk to Brendan specifically to re-advocate for ZA and see where that conversation goes?
Yes,
Yay. Yes.
Okay. Bob, Vince, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's worth a shot.
Anything
Gotta
that
do
moves it
something
along,
different,
yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'll do that. And because I think it's perfectly legitimate to say, look, we've been running this up the flagpole for a year. This is where we are. Let's try something different. I mean, Thetford's got a part-time ZA, you know, it's not it's perfectly justifiable. So I will have that conversation. I'll put it on the agenda in April and I'll come back with that. And heaven forbid something happens in the ensuing month that makes it even more interesting to report on.
Yeah, maybe somebody retiring from Fujifilm would take the job.
Maybe.
Oh, there we go.
I see. I don't know. That's it's a lucrative task. I'm not sure I could go for it. Okay, thank you. I think we just need to help move it along. We're not going to have Kyle forever, and clearly Kyle for 6 hours, 8 hours a week is treading water. So that means if we had somebody 20 hours a week, we'd be doing even better. So I will open it up in the cooperative spirit with Brennan. Okay, let's touch on capital planning for 5 minutes here and call it a night. So as I said, I think this is clearly in our wheelhouse as the Planning Commission. It hasn't been front and center for a while. I think that the budget conversation over the past 4 or 5 months reiterated the need for it. And I think we should raise our hands and say, we wanna do this. So what does that look like, I guess, is what I asked the group. What does it look like for us to get more involved in capital planning? Jeff?
Yeah, so keeping it short, town staff has been limited over the years. But when I look at Hanover, Lebanon, and Hartford, larger communities, obviously, there's the Planning Commission, the select boards, the public works folks, the town manager's office have all been synchronizing on these items to the extent that capital improvement planning appears before the Planning Commission, the planning board in New Hampshire to help advise, inform, et cetera. I think in this particular case in Norwich, I think it's a great idea for us to sink our teeth into this, because if I were Chris or Brennan, if I had volunteers with as much intellect as this commission, and I'm looking at Vince and Bob and other folks on this commission saying, we've got some really talented folks here who could really dig into this. And if they're willing to put the time in, they could do so much to benefit me.
Okay, Chris?
Well, since we just talked about committee appointments, to me that getting another subcommittee, I mean, I don't know who created the committee that occurred. Well, Linda left. Her husband was the chair of the committee. It didn't go over well. As a matter of fact, it ended quite abruptly and I think quite negatively. But I don't know who resurrected that in the first place. But this might be a great committee opportunity, especially since we just said, open the membership up to a lot of people. And I know a couple of people in town already who would probably love to be on a capital committee, capital planning. And I'm not sure, are we going to call it, would it be called capital budget, or is that overstepping our
Well, I think
is it more capital plan?
Jeff's, the word capital improvement is useful, but I guess the question I would ask is saying, oh, we're gonna do capital planning or capital improvement planning, is that too broad? Should we have topic? So the multimodal committee is going to include capital improvement planning for sidewalks or pedestrian, bike paths as part of its work. Is it more useful to link topic specific capital planning as we go forward here, Jeff?
And so the short time that we have, because my watch is ticking, I would like to ask our chair to reach out to Brennan and Pam and even Chris to say, hey, folks, look, we know our surrounding communities have more staff, but the spreadsheet about what are all of our infrastructure components, what's the life cycle What are the costs associated with it? What do we need to look at? And how can we help in that context?
I think that's a great idea.
So simply what we're saying, and I'm certainly willing to do this, and like I said, I'll do it with Pam on Monday to start it, but is the planning commission feels the need in town and has the energy and wants to get involved with capital planning, capital improvement planning in Norwich. And to your point, Jeff, it's really good to just turn it around and say, we got some energy to work on this. We got some skills to work on this. We can help pull the public in. What do you need? What would be helpful? What are your priorities? Whether that's Pam, Brennan, Chris, anybody. Okay. Chris?
This might be the one time where I would really kind of recommend collaboration with the select board, because I think it's an opportunity to combine
said that.
capital. No,
Yeah.
you were talking about Brennan. I'm talking about talking to, well, you
I
can
said
say Pam.
Pam,
He
select
said,
board, yeah.
he said Pam too. I think we're definitely in
Pam.
agreement, and that I do.
All right, Jeff,
Motion to adjourn.
So let me just restate what
hear
Jeff
what you
proposed.
said.
Yeah. So I will restate what Jeff said, and then we can go from there. But Chris, you're right that is, and that's what I wanted. That's what I said in the multimodal subcommittee to Jeff and Vince. I said, Pam just got elected as select board chair. I think this is a topic where we could help forward-looking, positive relationships between planning commission and select board. And again, it's us helping them by doing a distributed, this is our job, that's part of your job, let's work together. So I think we're all in agreement. Clearly, Brennan and Pam are the ones to start with, and then we can go out from there. But we're offering assistance on something the town needs.
How can we help you do your job?
Yeah, that's the message. That's the framing of it. It's very collaborative, cooperative, forward thinking. That's the goal. So then I will take that on. Chris?
Motion to adjourn.
No. You
Well,
only got Jeff.
I heard you, Jeff.
He only got,
Let's
I'm
write it
gonna
in.
make one point, and I wanna make this, I wanna hit this home, because it's one thing if we collaborate. If we have, what you didn't let me finish is that I think a member of the select board should be a part of a committee. Because if it's just the planning commission, it could be that they will dismiss whatever we bring forward. If a member of the select board is actually on this committee, they will then inform, and it will not just be a collaboration, it's like the finance committee. You can create all the kinds of committees you want, and then you bring it to the select board after hours and hours, and then they just ignore you.
Yeah.
If they want to take it seriously, it would be, when I say collaborate, I'm not just talking about, oh yeah, sure, you guys go off and do this. I'm saying get a member of the select board actively engaged on the committee.
Okay. Yep.
Jan, before my motion to adjourn, I want to apologize, Chris. The last thing I want to do is not allow you to finish. So now I make a motion to adjourn.
I just want to, I hear you completely,
Third
Chris, and
time's
I will talk to Pam about that. And I think it's a very good idea. I have a motion to adjourn on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All those.
Can
in
we
favor?
discuss? Can we
we can,
discuss?
I don't think you can discuss a motion to adjourn, actually. You have to call it. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Abstain.
Abstain. All right. So noted. Vince, you can note. Chris abstained. I'll leave the Zoom open for you, Chris, if you want to
I
stay.
want to stay later.
All right, everybody. We'll talk. Thank
See ya.
you.
Night.
Good night.